take a good look at this because it's about to change. Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. Well, as you can see, I'm super excited today because I have something that has been requested for a long time and I've finally done it. I have totally reorganized my art studio. I finally have it the way I want it and I can't wait to share it all with you. So this series is going to be a three-parter. The first one, which is this video you're watching, is all going to be about my full process for decluttering, organizing, thinking through what needed to be done, what needed to be in here. The second one will be the full-on art studio where I'll go into details, the way it looks now. I'm going to show you what's in the drawers, what's in the bookcases and whatnot. And then a third one will probably be about how I decorated it, because the art studio tour, if I wait until everything is to my liking with, you know, pretty things around, it's probably not going to happen for a few months because I feel that home decor is a gradual process. So a few months down the road, I will update you on how it looks. But for today, we're going to take a look at decluttering. There's a few reasons why I needed to go through this process. The main reason was that it was no longer inspiring. It was stifling and everything was built up full of stuff. So the walls that I was looking at when I was sitting at my art table was crammed and I felt like the walls were closing in on me, and that was a big blocker for my art. The other reason, which is a little bit more technical, is that I needed to bring my computer and all the peripherals onto my art table because I'm doing more and more live sessions. Because I don't have a laptop, I needed to relocate everything on the actual art table. Before, it used to be right here, and I'm looking at a giant window right now. And so the computer being in front of that beautiful window, which is great, cast such a light onto my eyes that I could barely see the screen, and it was very annoying when I was editing. So all these things contributed to the setup that I have today. Before we get started, I just want to mention that I have published a series of 9 videos to my Patreon account, updating my patrons on the process almost on a daily basis, and the feedback and the communication that came out of this was incredible. So if you are interested in watching this, you can just click on the iCard that's going to pop up right there. That'll take you to my Patreon page, and for as little as $2 a month you can sign up to become a member and watch all these videos and all the other ones that I have published since 2015. Shameless plug. So here's a condensed version of the whole process. I will come back at the end to share some tips with you. Here's a quick tour of the studio before I started the makeover on March 1st. And at the time, the biggest question for me was, do I sort in the studio or do I empty everything out of the studio and sort somewhere else? And I kind of did both. I also needed to assess where all the furniture was going. I have 2 work surfaces, one desk by the window, and the other sits in the middle of the room, and it is actually my art table. I also knew that I would have extra furniture that I needed to relocate in some other rooms of my studio, as well as donate some. And just in case I needed to film something before the end of the makeover, I wanted to make sure that my watercolor supplies as well as my filming equipment would be very easy to grab. So in the living room, I set out some baskets for the watercolor supplies, and in the kitchen close to an electrical outlet, I made sure I had all my equipment ready, my filming gear, lights, and rechargers. For a few hours, I debated where to start for the decluttering, and then I figured out that any place is a good place. So I decided to start with the pens and markers and pencils and whatnots. There are more that are not shown here, and that is because I knew they were going to a friend. So I made sure to test them out on a piece of paper. The dry ones just went in the garbage, of course. And then I separated them by categories in these acrylic bins that you're seeing. Those were gifted to me. Next, I needed to empty out that bookshelf because my son-in-law and my daughter were coming over to help me take that down. Those are bolted to the wall, so I can't do that all by myself. And they also need to be relocated into the living room. I also sold my art table, and this one needed to be emptied as well. After decluttering my desk, here are some things that I gave away. And my friends Sophie and Angel also came over to help declutter, and they left with quite a few bags, and that's only a portion of it. Next, I sorted out the books that came out of that big bookshelf. I obviously have art-related books that will go back in the studio. The rest will go into the bedroom, and these are the donation piles. The toughest sorting job that I've had to do was go through my photo albums and boxes as well as scrapbook albums, and anything that was too big to fit in a photo box or photos that were printed on regular paper, I made sure that I took a photo with my phone so that I can have a digital record of it. I had several scrapbooking albums that were unfinished, and I was able to combine them all into these 3 big ones and a small one. Some of my photos were damaged by old albums, you know, the ones with the glue strips on the back. So I made sure to condense them into better albums or photo boxes. Here's the damage. I got rid of a lot of duplicates as well. And I have another donation pile for scrapbooking albums and photo albums I no longer need. These are the wonderful people that came to help take everything down and apart. Once those pieces were removed, I immediately felt the piece wash over me. It was incredible. Now, of course, I had a lot of damage in my walls, and removing those plugs felt really uncomfortable and very messy. So I had large holes that I needed to fix. Of course, I used polyfilla to patch up the holes, and I sanded it down, and I was able to match the color of my walls almost perfectly with the Paper Artsy fresco paints. I used a sponge to apply the paint so I wouldn't be left with streaks. The process was very easy. It went really well because the paint dried very fast, and it is almost a perfect match. These units need to be relocated, so of course they had to be emptied out. I wasn't sure if I was going to keep the one on top, but I ended up leaving it almost in the same place, except that it rests on the 3 Alex drawers that I originally had in my living room. The table underneath the window was custom built, and at the time I had it matched with the second row of a Kallax unit. And this one is just a smaller one, but it's essentially the same dimension. So it makes for a beautiful long countertop where I can have all my machines and also some empty space to work with. The last big project in this makeover, and certainly not the least, is the closet, where I had to do a lot of gymnastics. I unscrewed the shelf so that I could fit 2 printers. One of them was sitting in my kitchen. I was also able to rescue this DVD tower that was put in the closet after the shelf was installed. This small rolling cabinet was underneath the table by the window. It's missing a wheel, so I wanted to put that in the closet. I also kept 2 of the multiple bins that I had originally in there, and this will serve as a shelf to put my 2 printers. There is a gap obviously between the filing cabinet and the plastic bins, but I was able to recover one melamine shelf that I had lying around, and then I put the large one that was originally over that on top of all of this, and it's quite solid, and the 2 printers rest very easily there. To build my new art table, I purchased these 2 Alex drawer units with the money I made from the sale of my original art table. The tabletop used to belong to my daughter when she was in high school. It was in her bedroom, and she used it to do her homework and crafts, and it's full of scratches and memories, and I absolutely love it. To prevent the top from sliding over these cabinets, I added rubber drawer liners, and it is quite stable. And here is my beautiful desk. My daughter came over to help me put the top on top because it required 2 people because of these liners underneath. And I'm putting back my original artwork that was there because it's my favorite piece of all time. Funny story, while I was researching a date to put behind a canvas that I was giving away, I went on my blog to look for the date, and I happened to fall upon my very first art studio tour that dates back to 2010, And that was in the basement of my previous house, and I think it's worth a look. I will link it in an iCard and also in the description of this video, because I think it's quite incredible what I did with that little room in the basement, and everything had its place. Of course, I was doing different things at the time and it suited my needs, but I thought that would be fun to include here. I also have another studio tour that you can look at, and I will also pop that in an iCard. And it is when I moved here 5 years ago. My studio used to be in the living room. The last bit of decluttering I had to do were my dies, my CeeCee dies, as well as the thin dies. And I combined all the dies into one small little binder. And from the CeeCee dies, I only kept the generic ones. So whatever fit inside the wall unit that I rescued from my closet, that's all that went in there. That was my rule of thumb, actually. Here's a quick sneak peek at the disaster that was left after I emptied the closet and some of the stuff that I wasn't able to put back right away. That's the state of my kitchen and all the empties that I had. Yeah. Next, I had to work on the closet. I bought this pegboard, and because I didn't want to drill any more holes, I didn't want to install 2x4s to put behind. So I came up with this system where I used felt cushions that you put normally underneath furniture, and I stacked them up, made a tower, hot glued some thumbtack on top of that, and pushed that into the drywall, and then secured the pegboard with tie wraps wrapped around the railing of the top shelf, and it totally worked. Now, of course, this is a small piece. That's a remnant because I ended up buying a big piece. For the big piece, I ran into some problems because, well, it was heavy. I was alone, and the wall is somewhat warped, so the thumbtacks are not exactly hitting the wall in all the places, but it's still secure because I have the tie wraps securing the whole thing. So in the end, it worked. I also added foam core on top of that shelf because it's a railing shelf, and I didn't want to run into problems when I was sliding in and out that equipment that I am shelving there. So that is the end of the big work. And I'm so proud of myself. And here's a cleanup I did also in my punches. I used to have 6 drawers full of those in my Alex units, and now I only have 2. I kept the generic ones and the ones that I have used in the past 5 years, 10 years. And that is it. That is the final decluttering, reorganizing. Mama's really tired, but she made it. And I finished on March 22nd at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the canvas you're looking at is actually something that I repurposed as well. It was a canvas with dimensional stuff. I removed the dimensional stuff and painted it with gesso, and it's going to be my inspiration board. So in my case, it's mostly watercolors, so it was very important to me to have all these supplies close to me. I used to be into mixed media a lot. I did also card making, rubber stamping, and although I have still kept some of these things, they're not located necessarily close to me, and even some of them are in another part of my place. And I will show you that when I do my full studio tour. This would have been so much easier for me if I had the space for it. When I talk about categories, it's things like, well, for instance, for me, it was watercolor supplies. So I grabbed all the watercolor supplies that I had in one spot. Then I had my cardstock and my pattern paper, the journals, the rubber stamps, the dyes, the paints, the acrylic paints, and all that. So when everything is in one spot, it makes the sorting so much easier and so much faster. There's also this little trick that your mind plays when you have so much things to sort and they're all over the place. It's very difficult to start. So by grabbing each category one at a time, you just tackle that one and you don't have to think about the other ones because you know they're semi-organized and waiting for you to go through them. This is the thing that most people have a hard time with, and I totally get it. I'm like that. Everybody is like that. Unless you're a very strict minimalist, it's very difficult to part with things that you have kept. For instance, I used to have a lot of beautiful pattern papers, and trust me when I say this, it broke my heart when I gave them away. I kept very little. The truth of the matter is that if you have kept something for 5 years and has never touched it or have never touched it, chances are you won't. And if by chance, for example, let's take the pattern paper again because it was a big deal for me. If you need that specific pattern paper that you were in love with and you don't have it anymore, chances are the store has the next best thing. I just lost my second light. We'll continue. This is also super important because it does help your friends sort through things that you want to donate, and you don't also risk the chance of bringing the donation pile to the recycling bin. I almost did that. So this is the perfect time before you do anything or before you put anything in place while your studio is empty. Install those the extra cord, the extensions, that's what they're called, yes. And also if you have a piece of furniture that needs to be placed right next to or right against an electric plug, they do sell flat plugs. So I will talk about this more in depth in my studio tour. So those are my 5 tips for a good, successful decluttering. I hope this has helped you, and if you have any questions, feel free to just leave them in the comments below. I would be more than happy to answer them. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you later. Bye!